and you'll be able to see our Google slide that we presented today. And hold on. Okay. And you'll be able to complete a pre-assessment for me, since, you know, blended learning, we like to know where our students are at. I would like to know where the teachers are at. And it'll ask you like your experience, what students you service, what subjects you teach. And I do see some fine arts teachers here, so I also included fine arts in there too. And also if there's any admin, instructional coaches, and you can go ahead and just click on the icons. Everything's hyperlinked. So if you want to join our Google Classroom today, we have that as well. So good morning, thank you. We are recording, and it's a very interactive presentation. You're actually going to be practicing going into breakout rooms. You'll get to talk to other teachers. So be prepared for that. And again, welcome. So I'm going to put the link in the chat box again, and I'll be putting it in case you log in out. And we'll get started. So we have about, I had like a 5-minute window on completing the pre-assessment, but let me go ahead and show you what that looks like in case you haven't done it already. So I just clicked on the little Google Forms picture. That's the little purple icon next to your checkout chart. And basically you plug in your email, your first name, last name, how many years of experience you have teaching, the level of students that you service, and then what subjects do you teach, and you can check all that apply. And once you're filling out the form, I'm actually going to be collecting your data and basing our training off of the data that I collect from you. So we have a lot of teachers that don't feel too comfortable with Jamboard or breakout rooms, and we're more beginners. I'll do more of a beginning training, but if we do have some more like experts in here, I will also let you feel free to go off on and do your own thing. So I'm going to just put like an example where you can see you're filling out your email, your name, oops, how many years of teaching you have, the level of students that you service, and then of course you click the content areas that you teach. And how successful do you feel like you've been at differentiating instruction so far? Listeners, so that's okay. So be as honest as you can be. I think I'd be like the little kid jumping into the pool. And then it'll ask you your experience with Google Meet activities like breakout rooms, the polls, question and answers, and your Jamboard. So again, I'm going to put the link in the chat box if anybody's joining us. Good morning. Here's the presentation link. And we also have a Google Classroom that I created today. So you'll have a bunch of information at your disposal, and you can peruse it at your leisure. So we're just filling out a pre-assessment. And I do ask for about like the number of students you have that have SPED accommodations, 504, LEP or ELL, and GT, because that's a huge part of differentiating, knowing your kids. And if you do have some SPED students or students that are more advanced, there's different ways that we can differentiate online for them right now. So I'm just filling out the pre-assessment as an example. And of course, when you get to the end, you'll see my little welcome Bitmoji and you submit. So those of you that are barely logging in, this is basically the link that opens up for you. And of course, you click on the little pre-assessment icon. All right, so where's the pre-assessment? So you actually click on the presentation link. It opens up to this Google slide that I published to the web. And what you're going to go ahead and do is click on the today's checklist, complete pre-assessment. If you click on that purple little sheet, it'll actually open up a new tab and it will take you to the pre-assessment. and I'll share the data that we've collected so far. This is what you would do in the classroom, right? You need to assess your students first before you know where to go off of. And so far we have 43 responses. And so far, we have a good mix. So about 40% of us have 16 to 25 years of teaching experience. About 31% is 11 to 15 years. 11% is about 5 to 10 years. And there's blue that's like about 16% less than 4 years. And we do have some 26 and above years. So it's a good mix. And we currently service a lot of 4 through 8, EC through 6, other, and then a huge percentage EC through 4. So I kind of can see that most of our lessons can be centered around maybe 4th grade, even though there's some that are below and above. And that's perfect because I am a 4th grade teacher this year. And most of us do teach the core subjects, reading, writing, math, science, social studies. We do have some PE, welcome, art, dance, band, and others. So we're glad you're here. And so far, we feel like we have differentiated mostly, but I don't know if it's been working too much. And there's a bunch of us that are in survival mode, which is totally fine. So of course, this is something that you can do with your students, create a Google form. And of course, it could be test questions, but it could be also how they're feeling in school, how comfortable they're doing. So I've done that for every day, their SEL check-in. They'll tell me how their day is going, and I can get data off of that. And also, most of us feel like we're intermediate users with Google Meet activities like Breakout Rooms polls. Most of us would rate our knowledge with Jamboard as like intermediate or beginner. So that's great. We'll be working on the Jamboards right now. We have a good percentage amount of everybody having SPED students, at least, you know, 1 or more. We have a good amount of students with 504 accommodations. We service many ELL or LEP students. And we have a good percentage of GT students. So we'll go ahead and begin. And we'll continue our presentation. I'm only going to talk a little bit, and then we'll practice being in breakout rooms, and I'll show you how to use the Jamboards. But again, there's a presentation link. And good morning. Usually I would say good morning to every student, but there's 77 of us, so I'll skip that. But I do see a lot of familiar faces. I've either worked with you or you were one of my teachers before, so welcome. All right, so, and you can follow along with the presentation. We just did our pre-assessment. This is a little bit about me. I'm an elementary teacher. I've been teaching for 6 years. I'm currently in 4th grade teaching at Mission Valley Elementary. I also did presentations with our state association, TSTA, and I help mentor beginning teachers or veteran teachers who need support and instruction. And I'm also our ASER Teachers Vice President. This is my Twitter handle, my email. Here are the hashtags we'll be using. And I will be tweeting, so follow me on Twitter. And our learning goal, just like with the students, I would tell them, you know, we're going to learn how to differentiate online using strategies on Google Meet and Jamboard. So in order to differentiate, and as you can see, I actually put the I do part. I know right now when we're having walkthroughs or even instructional teams, you're looking to see how do teachers instruct online. So you're looking for the I do, the we do, the you do. So right now, I'm modeling, I'm doing my mini lesson. So we need to know our special populations because we need to make sure, you know, focusing on those groups that they're growing. All students need to grow, but we really do need to hone into these special pops. Also, we need to have student data, right? You've collected your data on who's tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, whether that's in reading, math, or even in choir or band or orchestra. Also, there's another part that's kind of come out with the online learning, the students who have SEL needs and technology issues. So those kids that aren't logging in, or those kids that are logged in but their cameras are off, and we have no clue if they're really engaged in our lesson, or they're logged in but they're watching TV or they're playing a video game. Also, we have students that need support at home. You know, those students that they're struggling online and not feeling so comfortable. Maybe they're not asking questions and you think, oh, they've got it. You know, they looked confident. Maybe those assignments that they've been doing look great, but then come test time, they really didn't know what they were doing. So for Jamboard, there's some pros and cons. And I've listed them because, quite honestly, it's not the perfect solution. With technology, it's never going to be 100% what you need. But so far, the pros is that I figured out that students can interact easily with one another. I can see when the students are in a breakout room and they're working on their Jamboard, I can see if they're off task. I can see really quickly if there's a group that needs assistance and they haven't asked for help. I'll actually go into their breakout room and help them. It's super easy to differentiate the activities. I like that on Jamboard, you can actually post math problems or like a section of a reading passage, and the kids can annotate. There's a drawing feature, and that's something different than Google Slides. And then the list goes on and on. Some of the cons are that you can't insert videos. There aren't hyperlinks. You cannot copy and paste the entire slide to another Jamboard. And yes, it's very, very easy for students to erase another student's work. However, the first thing you can do when you're showing them Jamboard is the undo button. So you just have to figure out, okay, who made the mistake? Undo, undo. Quite honestly, I haven't had those issues. It maybe happened like the first 2 times, but once I had a system set in place, the kids never delete each other's work. I don't know if it's something that, you know, maybe they're older that they understand, or they're just really engaged and they really don't want to erase each other's work. And another con is that there isn't like a speech to text option, like voice typing, where the students can talk and it'll type for them. You can find that on Google Slides and Google Docs. So Jamboard isn't a perfect technology feature, but I feel like there's more pros than cons. So overall, with Jamboard, how can you group your students, and how can you utilize it to help our special populations and all students in general? So for SPED and 504, basically I'm able to put them in a small group, just like if they were at my table in the physical classroom, and I usually keep them in the main room or in the first breakout room. And I send all the other students into different breakout rooms, and if they need help, I just join their room when they click the Ask for Help button. It's really easy to put visual aids, anchor charts, if they need like a sentence stem, and I use that in correlation with Snap and Read, which allows the students to have that text-to-speech option, which it'll read it out loud for them. Again, great for visual sentence frames. I also use Flipgrid in correlation with it. You can use Nearpod. You can use a bunch of things to support all students. And even with our GT and more advanced students, I can easily increase the rigor by, you know, changing the way the questions look. And once they're done, I can easily send them off to the next step. That way they're not just stuck in a whole group waiting for me to finish. All right, just a few more and then you're gonna go off into breakout rooms. A really good and important way to think of teaching online is still your classroom management, your rituals and routines. So I taught my students before they go into breakout rooms, they have jobs. I always share the Jamboard link with them first. So I make sure that they've opened it up first. Then I set up the breakout rooms, and each slide on the Jamboard has a team captain. It has a list of the members, and the team captain presents their screen. The moderator makes sure that students are taking turns speaking. Now there's a raise hand button feature, which has made it a lot easier. The timekeeper checks the timer that pops up if you set up a timer for breakout rooms. So they're telling them, hey, we have 10 more minutes, we need to finish the work. And of course, everyone participates either speaking out loud, typing, or maybe they're inserting images on their Jamboard. So I figured out when you're assessing, and I actually put a breakout room for every single student. So they actually get to go into their own little breakout room. That way they have like a quiet space. They don't have to hear everybody else talking online while I'm giving instructions or helping a small group. So I'll keep my small group that has accommodations that maybe they need their test into chunks, right? They need more time. I'll keep them in my main room or breakout room 1. And when the other students need help, they press that ask for help button, and I just jump into their breakout room, and I don't interrupt those groups of students. Also, collaborative work, you can have them mixed by ability. So at the beginning of the year, I have them mixed that way. You know, my middles and highs could help my lows, and they could grow that way, just like in class. But as the year has progressed, of course, now it's mostly my tier 1s that are working on the answers. So they're now grouped by ability. So this is kind of just a chart of how I would group them. And again, usually my target group, one that does not meet expectations, SPED 504, they're usually in breakout room 1. My next group, team 2, are my target group as well, but they're more doesn't meet 2 approaches, and you can kind of follow along. And of course, my higher group that's more independent, that doesn't need my help, they're in like breakout room 4. And for SEL, I randomly have students shuffled. That way they get to know each other. The pandemic has been a factor for the students, but also I was from a school that consolidated with Mission Valley. So these kids have never really seen each other at all in person. So we are mixing the 2 cultures, the 2 communities. So it's been really, really important to me that even in the pandemic, but with this extra factor that those students are building relationships with one another. So that was like another factor on top of the pandemic and learning. All right, so here are some examples. And quite honestly, I don't want to get too into that part. I can click on it, and you can click on it on your end to actually see. But here's one lesson with, it was reading. And we did this one about, I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And we've only been using Jamboard for about 2 months in reading. And we've been using Jamboard in math for about a month. So with the Jamboard right here, usually my first slide, I put the title of the passage, my learning goal, I put on a little sticky note, and it's super easy to search the web for anchor charts. And then I just label that's author's purpose, that's text structure, and we were looking to analyze the text structure and of course the author's purpose in a fictional passage. So if you go to the next slide, and I can actually zoom in, this is how I present to the students. So I have a screenshot of part of my passage, and because for 4th grade we take the writing assessment and revising and editing, my passages, I actually purposely leave out certain like punctuation marks, I misspell things, so that as we're doing reading, I'm embedding those writing skills. And so we have this here. This was a and we're looking for the text structure. And I showed them like, this is what I would do if I was a student taking the test. So on the slides, I really do my main lesson on here. I asked them the question, we figured out it was sequencing. Then right here, we actually had these sticky notes shuffled around. And then the students had to tell me the sequence, the order of the events that the story took place. And then because I read the story out of order, they figured out, oh, if we don't have sequence in fiction, the story does not make sense. So we're able to click on the sticky note. I can actually type on it. I can change the color. I'm a very visual learner, and I color code everything. So this helps me a lot. And then this is how I differentiated for my target groups and my more advanced groups. We had 2 passages that we were reading. So I had screenshots of the passages. So, and they're here and they can expand them to read it. Or they can make it smaller if they don't need it. But they have that there for their text evidence. And for this lower group, I actually typed the answers on the sticky notes for them. I told them what the text structure was for each passage. I told them the author's purpose. And then I also included the sticky notes for text features, that both of these passages, even though one was fiction and one was nonfiction, we were still able to see that, hey, they both have photographs with captions. And what the students of this group had to do, they just had to sort the sticky notes. And that was a challenge for my lower group. So if you notice on the other groups, I didn't actually type the answers for them. They had to actually go ahead and find out what was the author's purpose for that passage, Hold Your Nose. What was the text structure for Bird Watching with Grandpa? And as you can see, if something is missing, that means it took them a while to do their work and they didn't finish. And I kind of did that with my third group. And then also my fourth group, I made it more challenging for them as well. So I took off the labels of the diagram for my high group. In my lower groups, you see that I do have those labels of, oh, what's different goes on the outside, what's the same goes on the inside. So you can see like little tweaks that I gave to the activity, but it didn't take me too long. All I had to do, say I have a fifth group and I want them to do what, I want them to do what they did right here on this slide. I would just click on these little frames, and anytime in Google that you have like 3 dots, that means there's more options. So if you actually click on the slide and duplicate it, I get the same copy right away, just like Google Slide. And now if I have a more advanced group, I could even maybe put another circle and maybe put another passage there, and now they're comparing 3 texts because they're my really GT advanced kids. And I do have some that are reading like 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade level, 10th grade level. So this actually was a pretty easy activity for that group. So that's kind of how you can differentiate using Jamboard. And there's many, many more examples on here. I have reading, I have an example of math and science. So you can peruse it as you would like. I do want you to get started in your breakout rooms though, so you can have practice. And of course, just to show you before we start, you do have the invite for our Google Classroom that I created. And in this stream, I have just a reminder like, oh, hey, do your pre-assessment, right? And in the classwork, you can find different information. I have the depth of knowledge charts here, where you can look at the different levels of questioning, increase your rigor, or maybe decrease it for some of our students that are struggling. After this presentation, I do have a post-assessment for you to complete. That way I can see what did you learn, what areas of help do you still need. And then I also have the examples of the differentiated lessons. So book of the month, I have that. And then I'll read your comments right now. I have like an early reading example. I have writing, math, science. And then I also have the t-test rubric because they've updated it for virtual instruction. So you can kind of see what are they doing for virtual instruction. So I do have some questions. It says, how are you assigning groups by level before or during lessons? Okay, so I do it by before lessons. Now we're halfway through the presentation, so I need to get you into breakout rooms. I'm assigning the groups beforehand. So based off of, for reading my station levels, I go by comprehension. So I'll group them off in that way. And then also I've noticed that, yes, I can group them by ability levels with reading, but my lower group, I've also included those students that online haven't been logging in, They're not really turning in any work. They've kind of, even though maybe they're higher level, they're really not as engaged. So they actually go in one of my my first groups. And then you can also assign individual Jamboards to each student through the classroom and make a copy for each student. Yes, you can do that as well. So this is my reading and writing classroom that I have. And that's exactly correct. It's really good for keeping kids accountable. They can still work in a group if you assign them one Jamboard for their group. But if you also want to have them do their own independent work, then I also gave them an independent Jamboard. And it's the same thing like with Google Slides. You would go to Google Drive, you would add the Jamboard and make a copy for each student. All right, so this is what we're going to do for your group work so that you can get into breakout rooms and practice the features. This is the breakout room Jamboard that we're going to be working on. And right now, some of you are logging in, but you don't know which team you're in. So you're going to be randomly shuffled. And there's, I believe, like 19 groups, but one group will stay in the main room. And I have for you some steps, and it's more complicated for adults, but basically you have the steps on slide 1. So somebody in your room is going to have to be on slide 1 telling you, okay, step 1 is this, step 2, we have to do this, step 3, we have to do this. And there's 8 steps. Of course, if you just want to play around and figure out Jamboard, you totally can. But like I mentioned with my students, the first thing I showed them on Jamboard was the undo button. So we're all working on the same Jamboard. So there's about 77 of us or less. So the undo button is right there. If ever you delete somebody's work or there's a mistake that happens, maybe the whole slide gets deleted, just press undo and everything will be fine. We have the little pen. If you click it twice, you can change the color. You can change it to a marker, a highlighter, or a paintbrush. You have the eraser. You have an arrow to go back to moving the little sticky notes or pictures around. You can insert a sticky note, and you can color code the sticky notes. If I want to edit a sticky note I've already used, I double click, and then I can edit. You can insert images. So like I was mentioning, I find on my anchor charts here, there's a better image search on Jamboard here than on Google Slides or Google Docs. So if I wanted to do, I know I have some fine arts here. Choir anchor chart. There's one right here about your posture. There's one on rhythm. So you can actually just find what you need really quickly, and it inserts as a little image and you can move it around. There's also some shapes. If you double click, you can insert some shapes. Here's the text box. And the text box, you can have different sizes and of course different colors, and you can align it differently. And then at the end of the day, you have a pointer, because when you present, I don't think it's showing. That's when you present, the kids really don't see where you're pointing to. So that's one of the pitfalls. So you're going to be randomly shuffled into breakout rooms, but I want to show you how I do that. Okay, so I'm presenting my screen, and what I do is I go to the little activities. So that's the little triangle, square, and circle. And you have breakout rooms, polls, and question and answers. So I would go to breakout rooms. If I have pre-created groups, this is where it gets tricky, but I would edit my breakout room, and automatically all of you are just popped into the breakout rooms, already shuffled randomly. But if I have a pre-selected group that I know I need those kids in one group and another group, the easiest way to do is to clear all the people. I'm going to put the number of rooms that I would like. We have a very large group, so I think it's 19. And then I want the timer on, because I want the kids to have a little notice at the top saying, You have 20 minutes. At the end of 20 minutes, it's going to close the breakout room and force them to come back in. So I'm going to click the timer. And if you have any questions, let me know. You can say it out loud, type it in the chat box. I have 2 computers, so I can see when you're typing. I'm going to put the breakout rooms to end in 15 minutes. All right. And I'm going to randomly shuffle everybody. And so you're randomly shuffled. What I do with my students, that's the easiest way for me. If they're all working on one Jamboard, I click on share because I'm going to give them the link before they log into the Jamboard or to their breakout room. And what I do right here to get the link, I make sure that anyone in Isleta can get it. You can always change it. And I want them to edit. I want every single student to be able to change the document. And I just copy the link and I press done. So now I go back to Google Meet. And there's another way that you can do it too, but I think this is like the easiest way. And then I go to the box and I tell them, here's your Jamboard link. And I don't open the breakout rooms yet because they'll go and they'll be like, what group was I in? I didn't get the link. And yes, that's the downfall. Can we make the groups only when the students are in class? Yes. Oops, don't go into your breakout rooms yet. I'm like, wait, don't do it. Hold on. So actually, I opened the rooms on accident, but that's okay. They can always come back. So I'm going to leave the rooms open. But basically, if you're in room 1, you have, it tells you on your Jamboard, but here's the link to Jamboard. Can we make the groups only when the students are in class? Yes, because based off of who logs in, you can still switch students around. But if they haven't logged in yet, you can't put them in a group. So that's kind of the sad part. So once you do have your groups, say for instance, I want to make a change. I had a student that logged in late and he's not in one of the groups. I would edit. And then I could like say, hi Daryl, I'm going to move you. I can move him to another group. And you can click and drag, or, so I can move him there. Or you can just type the names, that's faster. If you have like a pre-selected group that you want to work with. So say I want Daryl back in group 1. I can just start typing his name and then I click on it. He's back in group 1. All right, and then last but not least, if you actually click on the top of the group, you can change the name. So say I actually wanted to name this, like I name my teams as Pokemon. So if this is my Pikachu group, I can name it Pikachu. And of course, I would type it correctly. But you can change the names in case you want the kids to have a certain name for their group. All right, so that's pretty much what I have so far. I do want you to explore. Feel free to explore the Google Classroom together. If you want to actually do the Jamboard activity, you can. And I'll be copying into the rooms. And if you have a question, click the Ask for Help button, and I will join you and help you out that way. I'm just trying to change this group's name. All right, but yes, feel free, go ahead and, too many people are viewing this file. Okay, so if there's too many people, this is the first time I have so many people on one Jamboard. I actually created a second Jamboard just in case. So I will give you that link as well in case there's too many people. So let me give you the link of the second Jamboard. It's exactly the same. Can you send the room invite again? Jamboard. Let me give you the link to the second Jamboard in case there's too many people on the first one. So there's too many people on that first one. Here's the second. And I've learned that you can only have 20 slides on Jamboard, which I didn't know before because we've never gotten to that point. And I'm guessing you can't have 60-ish people.
Okay, I think we might have to not have so many people in the Jamboard. That was okay, that's better. We don't have the sound issue.
Okay. Is it me? Because I muted myself, but I was also muting everybody.
We can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So here is the link to the other Jamboard, the second one. So that's good to know in case you're middle school and you have multiple classes, make a Jamboard for each class. Yeah, and feel free, play around. And the first time, give your students that opportunity to just play with it. That's what I did. Each group got one Jamboard and they just got to play and draw, figure out the tools, because it is brand new. So just in case you all don't do the activity the way I planned it, that's totally fine because I just want you to explore. So you can explore the Jamboard. You can also explore the Google Classroom that I created. And there's many, many examples, and I'll go ahead and I'll show that. I tried to include as many examples as I could for each subject. For writing, I don't use the Jamboards, I use Google Slides. But there's many, many, many examples, those of you that are still in the main room. I'm actually pretty proud of what we've done in about 2 months. And I'll show you one of them. So that way, if you're still in the main room, you don't feel comfortable going into breakout rooms or the Jamboard is not working for you, you can have it here. And I really have focused more on the reading. And that's a tip for you. Like, just try to pick one subject if you're doing multiple subjects. Or just pick one concept that you can try out. But I always just... I put the learning goals first. So I really think, okay, how would I be teaching in the classroom? We would repeat our learning objective. I would make sure that I'm doing my mini lesson, that we had our group work or our shared reading, and then the kids had their independent work. And I can show you math right now. So basically, these are the slides. I was doing a mini lesson on traditional literature. Right now my computer's super slow because I have all these tabs open. But I went ahead and I went over what is traditional literature. And if you have a MacBook, you can actually set up your trackpad to do different things. So I can zoom in really quickly, and I can actually zoom into folktales and really like guide them through folktales. Okay, let's look at legends, and then I can zoom out. And I do that with the trackpad with my 2 fingers like this, and I can help you set that up if you need to. And then I just go over, we're doing traditional literature, but we're looking at fairy tales. What's the author's purpose? And then we were doing plot. So I found an image of the plot diagram, and then I just added, like for fairy tales, the main characters, the setting is typically the castle or the woods. What's the rising action? And I added just these images, and it's super easy just to create the little sticky note, the little icons afterwards, and then finally we have the resolution. So once I guided them that way, I took them through Little Red Riding Hood, and I had the video, and I would just change the tabs. I'm presenting on a tab, so I would play the video, we would stop once we would see, oh, okay, we're better the setting of the characters. Oh, we have the beginning of the problem, and I was typing as we went along because this is the I do portion. I'm modeling for them. So then when we got to the we do part, this is where the kids actually split up into groups, and I gave them different fairy tales. So one group was working on Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and this was my lower group. So I actually typed all the information for them, and their job was to just sort the sticky notes in the order that the story happened. So that's a really easy way to differentiate. My higher groups, I didn't type it for them, but I labeled the sticky notes as the exposition, beginning, rising action, and then they had to fill it out. And I have the little team members here so that they know what they're working on. And what I did to like increase the rigor for my higher groups, I gave them fairy tales that they hadn't read before. So my higher group hadn't read Rumpelstiltskin, and then the other group had never heard of Thumbelina. So that's another way I differentiated in that portion of it. And again, the higher group didn't get any of the labels. They actually copied my example. So they got the exposition, rising action. So they actually copied that on their sticky notes, and then they typed in the information. So so this is group work. They're collaborating online. They're in their breakout room. If they ask for help, they get their help. And then in my Google Classroom, once we were done, they had their independent work, which I label everything with weeks. And then I put little emojis so the kids can see visually, oh, we're doing fairy tales. They picked one of the fairy tales that we had read. So any of the ones they had worked on, they have their fairy tale library. In this case, they were doing character traits. That was the next day after plot. And they had our example that we did in class here, and then they had their independent Jamboard that they each got. So Rebecca, thank you. The max number of collaborators in a Jamboard is 50. So yes, I'm sorry, I'm a little elementary teacher. I only have 19 students, so that's good information to know. So the max number of slides you can have on Jamboard is 20. The max amount of people on one Jamboard can only be 50. All right, so I can go over another example, or if you have any questions, just let me know. And let me quickly fix that. In case you want to see math. All right. So the breakout rooms are ending in about a minute, and we have 4 minutes before this session ends. So I'm just going to quickly show you the map, and then I will give you your post-assessment. So everybody who was in the breakout room, they're going to receive a message. It's counting down. It's ending in like 17 seconds. They'll get a message saying breakout room has ended, return to the main room. And just so you know, the kids can actually stay in there. If they don't return to the main room, they can still be in there, but I can show you how I know that they stayed in there, they didn't come back. So really quickly, this was math. So I just insert an image of my problem of the day. And then because I want the students to visualize the problems, I put the little icons here. And then we solve using the little writing tool. And I do that for skills. And as you notice, I put everything like I do, we do, you do. So they know, oh, Ms. Well is modeling. Oh, now we're working together. And then they have groups where they were practicing dividing a 3-digit number by a 1-digit number. And they had really struggled with that. And then they had to create their own problem to match what we were doing. So that's like another way you can differentiate. But welcome back, everybody who was in the breakout rooms. Let me share my tab really fast. That way I can show you what happens if a student doesn't return. I can tell. So if I look right here, there's so many of us. I can see all the breakout rooms, and you were all good students who came back. If a student didn't come back, you would still see their picture there. If it's in gray, that means they actually are still in the breakout room, but they left the meeting like entirely. So you can actually, in order to go back with that kid, you can go back and set up the breakout rooms and open them again. And then you yourself can go to that breakout room and tell them you didn't return. Oh, I think something's unmuted. You can tell them you didn't return to your breakout room. Like, you need to come back, or the main room, you need to come back. So I'm just muting anybody who's not muted. Generated there. So let me just, I can always set up the link if you need help. I can meet with you later on. And what we're doing is our post-assessment. So how do you get to the post-assessment? Well, if we're in our classroom, if you go to classwork, you actually have the post-assessment as one of the presentation assessments, and you can click there to get it. Or if you are on the actual presentation, you can click on it that way. But again, thank you very much for joining me. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. And yes, please fill out that survey just so I can better help you in the future. Again, we reviewed, we learned how to differentiate online with Google Meet and Jamboard, but there's a lot to cover and 15 minutes is never enough. But the post-assessment will be right before the very end.
Thank you so much for presenting, Ms. Aguayo. I know that it's a lot of nights, it's a lot of preparation and worry and, you know, putting yourself out there and learning that Jamboard can't take 70 people, you know, and just being able to kind of just work with those little issues that come up and dealing with technology. And you did a great job. Thank you so much for presenting. I am glad that I was able to sit in on your presentation. I learned a lot. And I just hope that everybody got something to take back to their classroom Monday morning, that you're going to go back and your teaching is going to change just a little bit because of this session. And I hope your next session is just as great as this one was. Thank you again, Ms. Aguayo, for helping us out and presenting today. You did an awesome job. Have a great rest of the day. Okay?
Bye. And thank you, everybody that joined. I appreciate it, and have a great rest of the day.